Greetings, everyone. Greetings. It is I, your erstwhile poet and archivist, Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond, and I was just on uh, the WPA site. Um, where was I at? I'm looking at it now. So if you recall, I was on the Library of Congress site. If you recall, um, some years ago, there was a Works Progress Administration, and they received federal funds to collect the stories of enslaved folks, formerly enslaved folks. Hey, Angie. Hey, is this Viva la Vie? That's a great name, Viva la Vie. Um, the Works Progress Administration received monies to collect the stories of formerly enslaved people. And so we now can go to the Library of Congress site and listen to people recorded in the 1940s and later tell their firsthand experiences of being enslaved, what it was really like. And it's so fascinating. I'll add the link. So where am I? Where's the link? If you actually Google Library of Congress slave narratives, you'll find it, but I will type it here. Google um, Library of Congress slave narratives. So first off, let me just briefly, tell you just a bit about me and why this even matters to me. My name is Treasure Shields Redmond, and I am a poet, performer, educator, and culture keeper based in Southern Illinois. The area of the country I am in the U.S. is called the St. Louis Metropolitan. So I'm in the part of Illinois that is right across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, Missouri. So my big city is St. Louis. My big city is not Chicago, but thank God for Chicago. And that's a whole other conversation. But thank the Lord, the ancestors, and everybody else for Chicago. Um, and you know, I am someone who collects oral histories, and I have a nonprofit that is called the Community Archive. And you can get there by going to www.thecommunityarchive.org. Thecommunityarchive.org. And I love to talk about family histories and collecting stories. And most of us have older loved ones with fascinating stories and information. But I named this video Culture is a Conversation because this came to me today. Culture is a conversation. And I put, let me see, culture is a conversation, archiving provides knowledge. I was thinking today about how over time we know more than we did in the past, right? We can agree on that. We know a bit more than we did in the past. So you think about uh, old European histories where people didn't understand that hygiene, like washing your hands, taking regular baths, not having sick people be in the same bed, were ways to stave off disease. There was a moment in European history where people didn't understand, the physicians and the healthcare providers there did not understand that sick people should not be in the same bed, that you should wash your hands. They didn't understand that there was a such thing as a germ and that you could pass germs on. But over time, that knowledge was gained, and now we understand that you should wash your hands between caring for people who are ill, that you should take regular baths and wash your body to maintain your health. And when you go to the hospital, people with contagious, hey, Chris, people with contagious diseases are not put in the same bed. They are in separate rooms. So culture is a conversation. It is culture is an organism that lives and learns, right? So one of the things that archiving does, that collecting stories does, is create a knowledge base so that culture can learn, right? I was on the Library of Congress site looking, listening to narratives of enslaved people. And one of the narratives I listened to was a woman talking about her older brother. Her whole family was enslaved. And this Black woman was talking about her older brother. And they they he was somebody who would not let another man, whether they be black or white, whoop him. So he wasn't going along with it. And apparently she said he was a big nigga. Those were her words. He was a big old man. And I guess his pride and normal human self-worth would not allow him to let himself be physically dominated by another man, whether they be white or not. And it made me think about how so much about the history of enslavement has been painted over and made to seem as though Black people were always already victimized, taking beatings, and really not behaving like normal humans. Any normal human is going to get tired of physical punishment, degradation, demeaning, treatment, and is going to respond like a normal human. And it sounds like this enslaved man was responding like a normal human. You hit me, I'm going to hit you back. You throw blows, I'm going to block them, right? And I feel like it's important for us to hear and read about those kind of stories to understand that we've always been normal humans. There was not a time in the past where we had extraordinary restraint or extraordinary ability to take a whooping, to take rapes. The same amount of whoopings and rapes that we could take today were the same amount we could take then, right? So I thought that it was important that there was an enslaved person's narrative that provided knowledge that this kind of foggy, wispy, antebellum, gone with the wind. Um, Black people were just working and white people were just owning, and they weren't having authentic human interactions. That knowledge is there, right? Because we always have to protect um the vision of our humanity as Black people and other people of color who have faced enslavement and domination and colonization. we have to always realize that so much of the history is written by the enslavers, the dominators, and the colonizers. And and it is an agenda in those histories that are written. But oral histories, stories straight, first person stories straight from descendants, or first person interactions, are usually not not an agenda, not on an agenda. They're just the recounting, and we can glean from that the knowledge that we need. So, the project that I'm working on right now is I am talking to the descendants of family members who survived the 1917 East St. Louis race massacre. And the 1917 East St. Louis race massacre occurred during a time where massacres and pogroms and ethnic racial cleansings like this were happening all over the country. And when I just said ethnic and racial cleansing, Palestine came to mind. So I just got to pause for a second and say free Palestine. But let me jump back to this. So in 1917, in the earliest part of the summer, roving groups of mostly white men, but lots of white women, burned black people's homes, shot black people, stomped black people, lynched them on the street, pulled them out of public transportation and stomped them out, threw babies into bodies of water, um, just just all kinds of madness. The last family that I talked to that had an oral history about the 1917 riot was the Campbell family. After the riot happened, and it really was a race massacre, but it's popularly known as a riot. And that's another thing right there. You can see how how the dominators and how those who deployed the violence get to call the thing what they want to call it. So they call it a riot. And a riot sounds like people just kind of lost it and were knocking the windows out of stores and running off with TVs. And no, this was an organized attempt at racial cleansing, at getting rid of all black people in East St. Louis, Illinois. But the Campbell family have a memory from somebody who was a survivor of that riot, because their father was an older parent. He was in his 50s and 60s when some of his children were born. He passed away right before 1970. So these children of his, Mr. Johnny Campbell, are in their 80s and still living and still sharp. And they remember their father, who was interviewed by W.E.B. Du Bois. The Crisis magazine, the NAACP's magazine, sent Du Bois down to East St. Louis to interview and recover histories of those who had witnessed and survived the 1917 race massacre. Johnny Campbell was quoted in The Crisis. You can look it up. And his son and his daughter are two people that I interviewed about their memories of their father. Their father was shot and haunted by a lynch mob of white people. And luckily, he was able to escape over to what we now call Brooklyn, Illinois. Brooklyn, Illinois slash Lovejoy was a community founded by enslaved people who had emancipated themselves. And it was a small black community adjacent to East St. Louis. And their father was able to escape to Brooklyn and avoid being killed, because as he was running, he was shot in his hand. He had to hide under a train a car, and he used byways and alleyways to kind of get over to Brooklyn so that he could have a safe haven and live to see another day. And it's so interesting because when I talked to his surviving children, they talked about how their father went on to start a real estate business with two other black men. One was a carpenter, one was a plumber, and I forget what the other one did, but all three of them had trades. They would buy homes and flip them, they would share the revenue. And in this way, their father made sure that the oldest children, uh, that their tuition was paid at Howard University. So we have their father, who was from Meridian, Mississippi, which is a huge coincidence because I'm from Meridian, Mississippi. And he came up to East St. Louis, Illinois. Their mother was the second wife, the wife of his old age. And this man survived a race massacre, went on to become a real estate developer and investor, and sent his children to Howard University. So, stories of survival are cultural knowledge. We need to know. I started off by saying that Black people need to understand that we've always been human, normal humans with normal amounts of endurance for the fuckery. And we also need to understand that we are survivors. We are survivors. So, if you would like to join a class where you can learn how to preserve your family stories the way that I am doing, and preserve community stories the way that I am doing, I want you to go to thecommunityarchive.org and join my class. I cannot wait to see you there.